Good afternoon. This is the City of Liberty Lake Parks and Arts Commission. It's Monday, October 7 at 4 p.m. My name is Nancy Hill. We'll get started right away on the agenda with our roll call. Commissioners, Nancy Hill, present. David Heimbach.
Present.
Laura Frank and John Barr are absent. Katie Ferris.
Present.
Noelle Otterson Laparco.
Present.
Bob Schneidmiller.
Present.
Joni Hay.
Present.
Audrey White.
Present.
And welcome.
Thank you.
Also present are staff, Kate Hunter, Mikkel Stevens, Jen Camp, and Mark McAvoy. Thanks everyone for coming. Our next item is approval of our September 9, 2024 meeting minutes, which you'll see in the first part of your packet. Are there any corrections or edits we need to make? And if not, I'll need a motion to approve.
I so move to approve as written.
Second, we have a motion by David and a second by Bob to approve the meeting minutes from September 9th. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Please show the minutes have passed unanimously. We'll move into our citizen comments section. I believe we have someone that would like to make a comment. If you want to step up to the microphone, is that on for her? Okay. You might want to turn it so it's down a little low. There you go. Okay. And just state your name and address for the record.
Leslie Chastain, 23602 East 2nd Avenue, Liberty Lake.
All right. And what do you have for us today?
Well, just an idea I had talked with the mayor a couple of times about. She suggested I come and just present it.
Okay.
It's very informal. We moved here about 8 years ago, absolutely fell in love with Liberty Lake, thought it was beautiful, loved the people. We miss the historicness of it that we have discovered. Been to the museum several times. We have some of the photographs in our house. We've been to Salinas, California several times. And in Salinas, they have an artist named John Sierney who takes bigger than life-size art and places it around the city have you seen it? Out in fields, downtown. Every time you turn a corner, it's this bigger than life, whether they are part of history, part of farming, something to do with Salinas. And my husband and I both said, wouldn't that be great for Liberty Lake? Come around the corner and see the old diving board, the old Ferris wheel, the old something. And Anacortes does something somewhat similar than an artist did. They are somewhat historic. They're not bigger than life. Puyallup, someone told me Puyallup did one, and a metal, they took a photograph and had it put onto metal. I haven't been able to locate that one. I know Post Falls has a few. They're very small. I'm not sure if they're accurate for history. They're more people, I think. For advertising, I'm not quite sure.
Mhm.
I was going to call there and I thought, well, I don't want to go to too much that somebody doesn't, if you don't want to move forward. I can't be part of the board because or whatever the committee is, I'm a block off of
Outside the city limits.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But any help you might need, I'd be happy to do so. John Sierney's work his last name is Cereny. He has pieces all over the United States, and Salinas is just covered in them. They're beautiful. Anyway, would love to see the history brought about for people to see other than in Safeway up on the wall or the banks. Anyway, that was our idea and wanted to present it.
Thank you.
That's
Okay,
it.
thank you.
You bet.
And we do have a project proposal form. So do you have an email address?
Yes.
Jen can email that to you. And then if you wanted to spell out some more specifics, maybe with some of the examples and how we might look at that, then as a commission, we can look at it a little bit closer.
Okay.
So yeah, if you want to.
I can write it out for you and leave it with you, and I'll probably just head out.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect.
Okay.
All right. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.
Nice to meet you,
Thanks.
Leslie.
Thanks.
I'll reach out to you tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah.
You have my email, right?
Yeah, I do. Yes.
Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you again. I don't see anybody else in the audience. Do we have anyone online? Any citizens online? Okay, no. All right, seeing none, we'll move into our action items, which apparently we don't have any. So that's a quick agenda item. We'll go into unfinished business and recreation programming. And here comes the man, Mr. Recreation. Or Mr. Program, I'm not sure which.
Mister. I'm going to try to get the document put up on the screen real quick.
Okay.
Okay, so David Gaynor and I were talking, and we put together a online survey. So he emailed or Facebook that out last week, just to kind of gauge what the community wants to see. So as of, I think it was Friday, we had 120-ish responses on that Facebook survey. And then he and I also worked on putting a survey together, a smaller, more just quick one that we could do at the farmer's market, which they did this last week at the farmer's market. So I know it's kind of small. I'll try to make it a little bit bigger. But these are the results so far. I'm not sure why it's not going bigger, but so first question was just if you're in the city limits or not. So we had about 88 out of the 120 that were in the city limits that participated in the survey. Second question was trying to gauge where they're getting their information from. Top answer was Facebook, but the survey only did go out to Facebook people that saw it. So that's that makes sense. That's why it's number one. I just put kind of the top five. Email was number two, Splash, text message, and then the city website was number five. Potentially, we've requested funds for new software for next year, and that would have the capability of doing email blasts and text blasts in the future. So, to the more interested ways in receiving communication. Then we asked kind of the age range that people wanted to see. We kind of broke it down to 5 and under, 6 to 12, 13 through 17, the adults and seniors. In the Facebook survey, the largest group that they wanted to see programming for was for adults. And the number 2 is 6 through 12, then 13 through 17, 5 and under, then seniors. One of the questions we asked was just the top 5 activities you wanted to do that you normally do or like to do. Swimming pool was number 1, fair festival number 2, attending concerts number 3, walking for pleasure number 4, and swimming at the beach number 5. And then what top 5 activities? So this is kind of more gauging what type of activities they would like to see. Youth rec leagues was number 1, adult fitness number 2, adult rec leagues number 3, programs for adults number 4, and then nature programs was number 5. And then one of the questions was gauging kind of a time frame of day, weekday, weekend. And then the last question we came up with was, what's a reasonable cost for spending for programming per hour cost? So the number one was $10 an hour, then 2 was 20, 3 was 5, and 4 was 9. So that was the more of the Facebook about the 120 people survey that we did. And that's going to be out and keep going till mid-November. But we're going to keep pushing that one. And then as of just this Saturday, we did have a nice chunk of people respond to the Saturday survey. This one, we just broke it down to arts and crafts, health and fitness, homeschool, individual athletics, sports leagues, STEM, and outdoor activities. And then had people just mark what age range they were interested in with those. So arts and crafts, we had about 19 individuals that were interested in that and so forth. If you follow it down, health, fitness, 17, homeschool, 5, athletic individuals, 12, sports leagues, 10, STEM, 18, outdoor activities, 22. And then it's also broken down the interest in age. So eventually when we're all done, I'll try to combine those and have 2 different answers and kind of see where we're at. So like I mentioned last time, kind of what we're looking at is wanting to see for next year what the community wants to see, what categories, what age ranges specifically. And this is we thought it would just be nice to share that that's what we're doing, is doing surveys at this point. We're looking at different locations and avenues to do it throughout the November as well, and just collect more data. And then from that point, once we kind of see what the community wants, we'll start looking at programming for next year and bring different ideas to the commission and then gauge their opinion on it as well.
And just as a reminder, Michaela and I did create a budget, a starter budget for next year for some starting programs. We didn't really know exactly how much, so he just had some ideas, and hopefully we'll be able to utilize those line items for some programming.
That sounds great.
Do you have any questions so far?
Well, it's interesting. When I was looking at the age groups, I was like, wow, because on the first part of the survey, adults came up at the highest. But I guess if you add the 3 kids age groups together, then it's the youth that they're most interested in. It's just how you divide those activities up. So
no, we thought to divide those up. We're 5 and under, potentially not being at school, so more interested maybe in at home or earlier in the day activities. And then you have your elementary age and then your teenage age. So we were trying to kind of break it down that way.
well, hopefully we get some more results and then can see, what the final tallies are from the survey. But thank you for doing that. It'll help us as we go into next year and figuring out our programming ideas, or your programming ideas.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michaela.
All right. As I mentioned, Laura is unable to attend today, but she did send me some updates. So the Pavilion Historical Outlet, she simply said there's been no recent update from the Historical Society, and there's a very high probability that this will carry over from next year, given that this is October. And I looked at our budget that we submitted, and we had the carryover for the Kramer Parkway sculpture project, but we did not have a carryover for the Pavilion Historical Outlet. So I think we're going to need to amend our budget document and show that as a likely carryover. I suppose they could pull it out of their pocket at the last minute, but given that it's October and we don't even have a rough outline from them yet, that I think we're going to need a motion to potentially, how did we word the other one? What was the wording to that? The
Pavilion Park Historical Outlook 30,000
Just
or 20,000.
add it to the 2025 budget as a carryover item.
Yeah, as a carryover. I was trying to see where
I could make that motion if you need.
but the verbiage we used to match the oh no, that's the parking lot.
What's this?
Oh, flip it.
Match it to that. I think it's 4 or 5 down.
Pavilion. No, that's Pavilion Park improvement.
It's P5, PF5. Right there. Yeah.
Oh, it's that one.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the Kramer Parkway. Yeah, so we just said to carry over from 2024. That's, I guess
That was 20,000, correct?
yes.
So I move that we take the Pavilion Park Historical Outlook project of $20,000 and move that to 2025 carryover budget item.
Do we have a second?
A second.
Thank you, Bob. So it's been moved and seconded that we, that we carry over the 20,000 from the Pavilion Historical Outlet into our 2025 budget, anticipating that the project most likely will not be completed this year. Any discussion on the motion or questions? Seeing none, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, please show that the motion is carried over unanimously. I'm having a paper problem.
I want to ask Mikkel a question.
Mikkel?
Mikkel, going back to your recreation programming, the summer activities that we had the dance. Was it folk dance?
Two different types of dance in different countries, I think.
And was there yoga or Pilates or something? How well were those attended?
I just heard back yoga. Yoga wasn't well attended. She said she had about 3 people total through the summer. Not heard back from information.
Yeah.
All agreement as well. They did not.
Yeah, we want to take that in consideration if we're approached by next year's groups. Make sure that we perhaps look at something that's going to be, popular and get utilized, so we don't lock up the space for, yoga is actually on the grass, so it's not like it takes up. But if we tie up something to the pavilion and there's very little attendance, we want to make sure that, if there's somebody else that's asking about it, that we have maybe something that would be better attended as a priority. Just food for thought.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought.
We might want to look at the publicity too, so we find out if people really heard about it.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. No, good points. Good food for thought as we go into next year's programming and decisions. Okay, moving on from the Pavilion Historical Outlet, we'll move to the Kramer Liberty Lake Together. Again, that was an update by Laura, and she wrote, we're waiting on the artist agreement to be signed by Mallory. Laura's understanding is that she was confirming her insurance met all the requirements from the city. Then once that's approved, she'll be invoicing the city for 50%, which should occur still in 2024 as planned. So that looks like it's going to be completed. And that art project was suggested by the artist, rather than her standing in Trailhead and painting on the wall, that she could do it in her studio on a hardboard, which then can be mounted on the wall. And that makes it nice and clean for changing it out, or if there is a repair that has to be made. So that's the route that the artist plans on taking to get that done. And I think if she can do it in her studio, it should be a much better project than having to do it in a hallway. And Jen said, you said that was no problem.
Okay, oh, that's great.
Okay. Any questions on the Kramer Liberty Lake Together project? Or the Trailhead map update. I skipped things. Whoops, I just did the Trailhead one. Okay. Any questions on the Trailhead map update? All right, let's go back up an item to the Kramer Liberty Lake Together Parkway sculpture project. And Laura writes, says that's the one on the artist agreement. So I completely apologize. That I read it on the wrong
We know
thing.
what you meant.
Yes. Okay. Now let me read you the Trailhead one, what she really wrote. Danielle is reworking the proposal. We'll have some idea and color palette options to us by mid-October. We will pay the $500 stipend to rework the proposal from the original whimsical map that we saw the examples of. And then we will build a 50% down payment. She's requested to complete the work on the hardboard, which will allow for minimal distribution to Trailhead business for the installation of the piece. We'll also provide the flexibility to relocate the piece at a later date if desired, or remove it if there's ever a maintenance needed to access utilities through that wall. If there are no objections from other commissioners, I recommend that we move forward with the hardboard. Boy, it makes a lot more sense when you read the right item with the right item. Okay, so any questions on that? And again, on the Kramer Parkway project, we're just waiting on the insurance, and I think, didn't she just send it in?
Responded, yeah, she responded this morning, and she's working on next steps to sign the agreement.
Okay, so those are our two mixed up projects, and I apologize. Moving on to the CEC project proposal, the follow-up on that. Jan, did you have something?
Yes, I did. At the last meeting, we had gone through the project proposal document, and we had all discussed sending me further follow-up questions in the form of email so that I could compile them all together and send them to Robin to group everybody's questions together and receive one big lump answer. But I did not receive any questions from any commissioners. So I went ahead and reached out to Robin about next steps and about the discussion that we had as a commission. She actually did watch the last meeting on video. So after the discussion with her, she said it basically sounds like they're taking a little bit of a turn towards a different type of project that isn't necessarily focused on historical. So I think at this point, she's understanding that there really isn't a place in this particular project for the Parks and Arts Commission. We did discuss having lots of volunteerism offerings from this group at the meeting. And so she will definitely reach out, and was thrilled by that kind of support. So if they do move forward in a historical type of project, she will certainly keep that in mind and utilize some of the talent and historical knowledge that we have here on this commission.
Okay, well, that's awesome. I can't wait to hear which way they're moving and what they're going to be doing. Moving on to the Public Art Fund update. I did listen to that after the fact. I didn't go to the meeting, but Mark, did you have an update on that for us?
Yeah, quick update. If you all tuned into the council meeting on the 1st, you'll know that we had this item on the agenda, but we chose to defer it because of the length of the other discussions. And so we actually did not cover this on the 1st and are planning to include it as a workshop on the 15th. But after our workshop discussion on September the 3rd, and basically what that was, if you'll remember, was to kind of walk council through different options based on some popular methods for establishing dedicated public art funds in other cities. And so we kind of walked them through that, and then provided some broader context and even some historical data about what has happened here in the past. And at that time, I did not realize that there was a policy in place. So that entire conversation took place as a precursor to a conversation to get council to commit to a methodology for establishing a dedicated funding source. And if you remember or tuned into the September 3rd conversation, you'll remember that they really weren't, their preference was not to establish like a percentage, like a calculated percentage based on either expenditures or any other thing like that. They kind of focused in on tying it to revenue. And so they tasked staff with going back and developing 3 to 5 options. And again, prior to realizing there was a policy in place, we started to look at that. And regardless of which revenue source you used, the funding actually came in below what the current levels of funding are. And so that didn't make any sense. And so as we read through the existing policy, I don't think that there's any need to change it based on what it says. And what I'm referring to is the policy that council voted to implement back in March of 2019. And I'm reading from section 1.2 of that document. It just says city staff and the commission will work together to develop a program and recommend funding for public art in the annual budget process. Funding for public art will be considered by the city council as part of the annual budget process. Public art and public art services will be purchased, procured, and selected in accordance with the city and or state's financial and procurement policy. So what I would recommend is that we continue to follow the policy that's in place. And as you draft your annual strategic plan and you get more specificity with respect to the projects on that plan, those are just incorporated into the budget and the council adopts the budget on an annual basis. I think if there is an opportunity to amend this policy in any way, and again, if you'll remember the conversation, there was some discussion about the concern of what happens if this money is transferred into an account and then is not spent. And so I think if there's any opportunity here, it's maybe to define what that period is and then talk about what a clawback may be. But other than that, I think you have a funding source. I maybe clarifying in the policy that the funds actually are transferred into the public art fund for this purpose. That may be a clarification that needs to be added. But in terms of trying to tie a percentage or some other formulaic or mechanical calculation, I don't know that that's warranted at this point, considering that this is in place and has been in place for at least the last 5 years.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because I was at the September 3rd meeting and when they started talking about percentages and I was hearing from whatever a capital funded project and I started hearing the numbers, I'm thinking that's less than our annual budget. I had the same thought. And could we ask for more and how complicated is that versus like you say, a percentage? So, I mean, that makes sense to me. From my personal preference, and I don't know how the other commissioners feel, having it operate more as a fund in which when the money goes in, if it's unspent, then it could be like a savings account for if we have some year a larger project that we could budget for it, but knowing that we could take part of it, from our savings account to, make that happen. And what would that look like versus if the money isn't spent, then what do we do? And it would save us as we're dealing with artists and timelines about if we can't complete a project, then it would be simple to just carry that project and finish it over the next year.
Yeah, I think some of the challenges exist because of our accounting method, right? We're on a cash basis versus an accrual basis, and that presents some challenges, but I don't think to any degree that can't be overcome. I think really the most important thing is instead of budgeting the amount budgeting an amount that's consistent with what is approved in the strategic plan and just having it in the budget. Yes, it needs to be in there, but the funds need to be transferred into a dedicated fund. That's the piece that's missing.
Okay.
That provides the savings account, if you will, because it's in that fund and that balance just carries over from year to year to year. I think we're going to have to discuss some kind of reverter, right? If and I'm making these numbers up, but if $100,000 is budgeted for a project, a public art project, and I don't know what the number is going to be, 3 years, 5 years, whatever it is, if that project is not either completed or council agrees to extend the timeline, then those funds revert back to the fund of origin. Otherwise, you would be building balances over and over and over, and that's not the intention. And so something like that, I think, may need to be added. But in terms of the mechanism itself and to allow you the flexibility of dealing with circumstances outside of your control that sometimes take projects out of one fiscal year into another, you've got the structure established. I think the missing piece is the transfer of the funds into the dedicated fund, and then whatever the agreement is going to be on the reverter.
How would you see a separate vehicle for handling like a capital project, like, for example, we build a new library, we build a new city hall. If we wanted to have public art in that, would we have to go through our budget process to get that money? Or do you see for every, what I would call major capital project, would a percentage of that project, like for the library or city hall or whatever, be set aside for public art? Or we would have to be forward thinking and put that in our budget?
I would say the better mechanism is the latter, right? As you're forming your strategic plan every year, you're doing that in conjunction with reviewing the capital facilities plan and seeing what's coming up. And then, of course, you can adjust as those things change. But I personally, after reviewing the policy, and really, if we were a community that did not have a public arts program, if you were going from nothing to starting something, sure, 1% of a capital project, that's a great way to start. But we've already got a program established, and really it's just a matter of following through on the provisions in the policy that exist and transferring the funds into the dedicated public art fund versus just leaving them in the general fund and budgeting them.
So will the council still be having a workshop then on this to kind of go through what you've just gone through?
So what I just described was going to be our recommendation on the 1st and will be our recommendation on the 15th, assuming that we don't get bumped again. And then, like I said, we'll open the discussion for, talk about a clawback clause and all of that. And so I don't know that we'll make final decisions on the 15th, but yes, that would be the goal, is to have the follow-up workshop on the 15th to discuss what we just kind of reviewed here.
Okay. Any questions for Mark on that?
I have a couple questions for you. So in your dealings in Texas, right?
Yes.
Okay, so did they have a public art fund with the percentage of funds that went to?
So in the 3 cities that I worked for, yes, they were different percentages and they were handled a little bit differently in each case. But yes, there was a dedicated percentage, and it was tied to the capital budget. Yes.
Okay. So my next question is then, is there a benefit to doing it that way? Because so many municipalities do it that way. And true, we've never really been shut out when we come to city council for an art project. But at the same time, city council is saying, we want more, we want more. I think as a council, we need to be able to monetize that or figure out what that dollar amount, what does that mean, right? So do we just come and say, here's a $5,000 or here's a $55,000 project? I don't know. I think there's good, and I agree the way that we're doing it right now is working. But I'm just wondering if there's going to be a better benefit to having it as a percentage of revenue that goes into a public arts fund.
Yeah, I think there are pros and cons. One of the pros is you have a dedicated source that you pretty much know as the capital budget is established. On the con side, you typically in that framework have the pieces of art that are funded through the capital budget calculation. There's some nexus between the art and the capital project, right? And so in our case, the higher valued projects are roadway like overlays. And so there's some inflexibility there, right? If you're required to have some kind of nexus between the artwork and overlay project, so after a couple of overlay projects, you may get stretched to define what a nexus of a project would be. Whereas if you're just funding it through the budgeting process, you have maximum flexibility to define the kinds of art pieces that you want to introduce for the community and where they're located. And so there are pros and cons to both methods.
So would your recommendation is that we just leave Sleepy Dogs Lie?
Well,
with the
considering that the policy is in effect, I would say yes. It really is just a matter of fine tuning it and making sure. I think probably more than anything else is on an annual basis, we're reminding council that what we're bringing to them or what you're bringing to them is defined by the terms of the policy that they established. And as you want to make recommendations for a higher or lower amount based upon your capacity and what you believe is lacking in the community, what the art needs are, you have the flexibility to do that and slide that amount up and down on an annual basis.
I'm missing great point. I'm missing the need for a separate account. If what's the need for a separate account if the city is going to fund a project? Are we talking about putting that money into a separate account
Right. No,
prior?
when I was talking about the capital facilities, like if they're building a library and they want public art, are they going to give us a portion of their budget? But Mark's saying, no, we don't have to do that. We would just put it as an ask on our budget to have public art at the library that looks like this and costs this that much.
Yeah, you would define it as a project associated that you're implementing at the same time as the capital project is being delivered, but the funding mechanisms aren't tied together necessarily. To answer your question, David, about the account, I think it's important to have a dedicated fund because what's happening now is for example, say the 2024 strategic plan was adopted last December, and I don't remember, Jen, what the number is, but whatever the number 74,000, that amount was budgeted in the general fund, right? And so what you would want to do to preserve those dollars to ensure that they implemented the projects that you had recommended was to put it in a fund so that if the timeline, something outside of your control occurred to delay the project, you wouldn't have to go back to council and authorize your next year's money plus this year's money to implement a project that didn't get implemented. You would have that funding source established, and you would just be implementing in the following year.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah, I like that. And I understand that there would have to be like a sunset clause on it because if we never spent the money and all of a sudden we're building up this incredible fund balance, that doesn't make sense.
Right. And you would, from a purpose-driven standpoint, right? You wouldn't want to do that. You would want to be delivering public art projects for the community. And so I think it's important to have that conversation. I would hope that we would never be in a position where, we're clawing back money every year. You would want to use it to deliver public art. So.
Yeah. Okay, good questions. Any other questions for Mark? All right, I guess we'll look forward to see what happens on the 15th and what's the pleasure of council on this, but that makes sense what you're saying. So appreciate that.
Sure.
Next item is the remaining 2024 budget and any project possibilities. Again, it's like about leaving money on the table. We have these line items and, we get caught up in some of the bigger projects and sometimes we might not spend all our beautification or all our programming or something. And I asked Jen if she could kind of take a look and see what that looked like that we had. And if, depending on that, is there a small project or something that we could do before the end of the year? So we have most of our beautification money still.
Well, again, it's not necessarily portioned out. It's the $74,000 is what sits in that account.
Right.
So it's not rationed out. I looked at our supplies line item. We spent $568 out of that line item, but most of it was for supplies like to install the Smarty board, paint for the trash barrels,
The frames,
the frames,
art.
and then on the public art capital outlay, we've spent $4,000 to Danielle Davis, and that's all we've spent. We still have the $20,000 to spend on Kramer Corner, and then what is it, 4,000 for wall map. So that there's still some, but there's not necessarily 5,000 specifically. It's just part of that 74,000. 5,000 of it is delegated per year strategic plan to beautification.
Yeah. So we probably, because we're only spending 4,000 roughly, or certainly under 5 on the programming, the Trailhead Art Wall. We probably have 5 there, and we have close to the whole beautification. So we probably have $10,000, I would say safely, that we could spend on a project throughout the year. And I really personally like the graffiti barrels, and I know
We could use more trash barrels in parks for sure.
and did your team have a way to seal those so they're not
Yes.
ruined by the end of
Yes,
the year?
we'll clear coat them.
Okay. So, and there could be other ideas.
I
we
have
don't-
a suggestion.
Okay.
So one of the things that I noticed when you're out at the pavilion is the condition of the surface of the concrete. So I know that there are a lot of technologies today that can dress that up. It's concrete ceiling, concrete painting.
You're talking on the stage?
Yeah, the whole inside stage and the inside of the pavilion. It could look pretty rough inside there. Not that it needs to be pretty, but it can look pretty rough in there. And maybe we look into do some type of coating or colorization or just some kind of finish to that stage to make it, to dress it up a little bit.
We could look into that. I don't know that we can get it done this time of year,
Yeah.
being so late.
Right.
That would be the only.
I just think it would look nice, especially if you go out and walk the pavilion, it's getting pretty dated looking, and just in general, and the concrete's and getting to be pretty shabby as well. But that might be something to look at for next year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that could go hand in hand with the ticket booth and all that
Mhm.
other stuff we're doing.
Exactly.
Nancy, if I can interject, I should have mentioned this earlier, but as the art collection grows, especially if you have more exterior pieces, part of the strategy for having a dedicated and separate fund is to make sure that you cover maintenance. Because right now, although we perform maintenance, we don't necessarily budget for maintenance. And so we're going to want to
We did
have.
in 2025.
Good.
And
Because-
we do have 5,000 that we've put in every year since the commission has been in existence for staffing purposes. That's if we had vandalism, if we have to do something to the area, we have to replace a light bulb at the Rocky sculpture. So there is that, but it's 5,000 might be a bit limited. And everything has been so new to this point that we haven't had to do any real
Yeah.
maintenance or upkeep.
Is there any maintenance that needs to be done this year that your team noticed?
The only-
Other than what David obviously.
Yeah, so that's gonna lead us to the public art inventory, but the one that does need to be redone is the wrap at Orchard Park pickleball box. That was actually done by us, by the city. That was not a donated box, and it's peeling and coming apart. So that's one box that could be recovered.
So
But
that can be,
STCU, if you recall, did not want to sponsor that one. They wanted to stick to their sponsorships at the signal box. This is just a pickleball storage
Okay.
box,
Oh,
which is why the city paid for it. Yeah.
I just had a conversation with the woman from SDCU, so they were more than anxious to help out. So maybe that's something we can do this fall.
Mhm.
Doesn't take much to do it.
And that box is portable, so I know he can't wrap in certain temperatures either. But that is one that maybe the staff could take to his shop, and maybe he could wrap that in the shop.
What's the one at Rocky Hill look like now? I think that has the city emblem or
Yeah,
something on it.
yeah, that's another one we did because we didn't have a sponsor for that. So the Rocky and Orchard were city done. I think the one also at Pavilion that has the emblem was done by the city. None of those 3 were sponsored. But I think the rest of them, from what I understand, are in pretty good condition. Mikkel went out and did some inventory work, which I'll talk about here in a
So
little
the
bit.
pickleball one is the one that's pretty beaten up.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
But-
I'll reach out. I'm trying to remember the name of.
Kristen
What was-
Piscopo?
Yes, thank you.
Mhm.
That's interesting. They didn't want to sponsor it before, but you're thinking maybe they would
Yeah,
change their mind.
they seemed pretty anxious when I spoke to them last week.
Okay. Commissioners, can you think of anything that you've noticed or you have an idea for that we could complete this year and that would fall under beautification or?
I've got some ideas, but I also have a question about the parks and recreation, since we have a recreation director now. If we're developing programming, do we have to build up a fund like for equipment or anything for the recreation programs? Like say we do build a swimming pool, will we be funding some of the supplies for that area? I'm just curious. Or do all the recreational programs, do they pay for everything that they need by
So-
the fees or?
Yeah, so initially we have budgeted money for programming for next year, whatever that program looks like. So whether it's
That's in your budget?
correct in our budget, not in Parks and Arts.
Okay.
So if we host a program and we have to buy pickleball supplies, we have that money in there. Staff does to be able to start up these programs. Those
Okay.
programs will come through the Parks and Arts Commission for support. But yes, we have line items for those programs to get started up. And then at whatever point that we start retrieving fees, or the fee structure, that will be something Mikkel will track to see if we're breaking even or recouping any costs or not. And we'll go forward from there. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I was curious about that.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want me to go ahead with our bike advisory report.
Yeah, well, let's just finish up this.
Okay.
So, I mean, our next meeting is first, obviously, of November. David, you're gonna check into the pickleball thing, and we have the budgetary money to do it if they don't. I don't know what the theme or something like that, or where we might want to get the art. That's kind of near, that was at Orchard?
Yeah, yes.
That's kind of near Selkirk Middle School.
I thought it was Rocky Hill.
So we could consider that for art.
There is a new park going in, obviously with Greenstone. There could be some opportunity for bike racks there.
By the river?
Trip at
Yeah.
Trailhead.
The Harvard Trailhead. Yeah, they're working on that this fall, so that could be a great opportunity for bike rack donation. They're building their property, part of it's our property, but they're building it, designing it. So the connection would be to connect with Greenstone and Kevin Schneidmiller and Mike Terrell, who kind of headed up the project. There could be it will fall under our jurisdiction. They're going to deed it over to the city once it's complete, but will be a city piece that we will maintain and take care of.
Where is that planned location?
Harvard Trailhead to the Centennial Trail.
Oh, nice.
They're expanding what's already there, I believe. Katie, do you want to reach out to Greenstone and see if they're planning on a bike rack or anything?
Sure.
And then if not, then, that's something we can talk about at our next meeting.
Jen, can you send me who to email?
Yes, absolutely.
Because I think that would be
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
awesome. We could probably get some that, look kind of cool or
More
something.
artistic, yeah.
Yeah.
Bike racks. Mhm.
Okay, and if anybody thinks about it this next month and they have an idea, and we'll see what David finds out with STCU. All right. So let's segue into the bike advisory update. Katie, thanks for
Okay.
providing the report.
Yes, we've been meeting the last Monday of the month and have various people from the community being a part of it. It was really great this month. Ben Turner, our new Public Works Director, came because we're really interested in having him develop a master plan for bike and pedestrian safety in Liberty Lake. So as he said, they're working on sidewalks and different street ideas in Liberty Lake, that it's really important that we have a master plan for bike safety. So we talked about that, about the different areas of concerns on the busy streets, making sure that there's, as we repaint the streets, make sure we continue the bike lanes, possibly having bike share painted on the roundabouts because a lot of people are concerned that cars don't realize they do have to share the roundabout with bikers. So if you had the bike Cheryl painted in the roundabout, it would, be more obvious to drivers that they do have to look out for bikers. So we also are hoping to get some input from the Spokane Valley Fire Department and the Liberty Lake Police Department on emergencies they've been called to here in Liberty Lake, areas of concerns for bikers and pedestrians. So they've come to a couple of our meetings, the Liberty Lake Police Department has. And so I did stop by the fire station right over here in Liberty Lake, and they are concerned with more traffic happening right on Appleway there by Home Depot. So I think their input is going to be good for us to really highlight any, obvious safety concerns that we could mark the streets. We could do a green pathway where possibly the bikes know how to cross the street safely and the cars are aware of it. Maybe some signage on the street, share with bikers, that kind of thing. Could all be, and they're not that expensive to have that happen, but as we're like repainting the streets, we might want to be aware of that. We can add a little bit more on biking, so bike safety.
That sounds great. There's been so many pedestrian accidents lately in the greater Spokane area and, bicycles and all that. So anything we can do to make it safer seems good because there's a lot of bike riders in Liberty Lake. So thank you for that.
Yeah, we're going to have one more meeting the end of October, the last Monday, and then we'll probably take a little break in the winter. But we're really hoping to get just even a little bit more input from the fire department and police department to really highlight safety concerns. So
great. Well, thank you so much for your report. And now we'll move into the staff report.
Well, there's one other thing I forgot
sorry.
to mention. As far as the educational part of bike safety, I talked to the leadership teacher at Selkirk, and they're interested in having a bike to school day this spring. And I'm actually hoping at Ridgeline too, we could get a bike to school day going for them. And, as a part of that, I'm able to bring in free helmets for students that don't have them from the Scope Bike Safety Program. So anyway, it's a really exciting way to get kids, back on our bikes, let's safe, get a helmet, that type of thing. So maybe I can be talking to you too about how to promote that at Ridgeline. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks for all your hard work, Katie.
You're welcome.
You really run along with this. Is terrific.
She rode along.
Yeah.
I rode along with it.
Yeah, it's exciting to see people step up and be a part of it and have a passion for it. So it's pretty good.
Well, you really have a great committee, it sounds like.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, Jen, staff report.
Thank you. So we're going to tag team this report today with Derek and Michaela on hand. The first part is obviously events are winding down. We've got Winter Glow coming up soon, and Hometown Heroes banners, I believe, will probably come down around Veterans Day or after for the year. And moving on to projects, I mentioned the Harvard Trailhead Entrance Greenstone project. Derek, do you want to take projects? You're on mute, Derek.
All right, can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
So touching base on the Harvard Trailhead with the Greenstone project, that's moving forward. We're working with them to get the restroom cleaned as well as locked up, and they're going to start tearing that down next week. After that, they'll start looking at bringing in the new CXT restroom. So that is moving forward, and hopefully will be completed by next spring. On the Rocky Hill and Pavilion resurfacing of the courts, Pavilion got resurfaced last week. It looks very, very nice. Same color schemes. And then this week they're hoping to start on, or they have started on Rocky Hill, and they'll continue that through this week. And that should be completed by Friday. For the pavilion roof, back to what you guys were saying, it is getting, it's a little bit older and the roof has been getting a little bit of wear and tear. So this year we looked at getting a new roof on that. That started September 30th and actually was completed the same day. So they did a very quick turnaround on that for us. The restroom at Rocky Hill will start getting painted on the 14th. They're going to be painting the interior and exterior. Again, that'll be the same color scheme, and that should be about a 4-day process. They will also be pressure washing, removing all the old paint as best as they can, and then fixing any cracks or expansion areas that they need to on that. For the Lions Club, I met with the group today out there. They're hoping to pour concrete on Tuesday or Wednesday. And then after that, they're hoping to start doing pavers possibly as early as Thursday or Friday this week.
Just for everybody who's interested, there are pictures up on the screen of pavilion.
That looks so much nicer,
Yeah,
especially the smaller court.
we were a little overdue by a couple of years. That one's
The amount of play they get throughout the summer and just throughout the whole entire year.
and now we've got a nice clean new court next to the Hooptown mural.
Yeah.
So
That's awesome. Thank you,
Okay.
Derek.
You're welcome, ma'am.
okay, moving on. We already discussed the future funding conversation. Thought I'd mention Lisa obviously will still be in the loop for the comp plan and parks plan discussions. There isn't anything in the near future that I'm aware of with the commission, but probably into the spring of next year, we'll have those conversations with her. Under number 5, upcoming council report. Would anybody like to volunteer for that October 15th council report?
I can do that one.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thanks, Nancy.
Upcoming position expirations, we have 3. I've reached out to everybody. What I do need are the applications turned in sooner than later. If I could ask, I will probably be putting those on probably the first meeting in December for council confirmation, after I chat with the mayor, and she's the one who will make the appointment and council will confirm those. So I just need the application form that I sent out a little bit ago. And then I wanted to provide an update now that I have time to do things that are really important that I've wanted to do for years. You will see attached a public art inventory that Mikkel and I have been working on. And basically it's an inventory for, this is more for insurance purposes, this document. Mikkel's going to weigh in on something way cooler than this here in a minute. But this, for insurance purposes and tracking purposes and history, I developed this art inventory. And actually, if you look at the back, it's one big long, I apologize, it printed this way. It's one big long spreadsheet, but it shows the initial cost, you know, who the artist was, if there was title, the location, everything. So I've never tracked anything like that before. So it's really great to have this. Please feel free if I missed something. I think the only piece I'm missing is this artwork out here in the entry by Sindhu. Thank you, Sindhu. So I need to get that added, and I'll chat with Tom Salberg about the history of that. But so that's going to kick us off onto what Mikkel is working on, Art in Liberty Lake. I've always wanted to put something on the website that kind of showed off.
Quick question.
Yes.
I assume you have pictures for insurance purposes and all these things.
Just not quite yet.
Okay.
But we do have pictures. They're just not associated with this spreadsheet quite yet. So Mikkel's going to show you kind of the other half of this that's going to be attached to our website.
Yeah, so Jen asked me to see if we could put the art on the website. So I've been kind of putting some bones together. So we have our Parks and Arts Commission page here. And then It's not live currently, but when it would be live, there'll be two other drop downs under the Parks and Arts Commission. There'll be one that says Art and Liberty Lake and an art map. So if you click on the Art and Liberty Lake, then it would be broken down. None of these categories are set in stone. These are just kind of what I thought of as I was putting this together just for the bones. We would have different categories. We have quite a few box wraps, so I thought to make that its own category. Murals, functional art, other mediums, and then sculptures. Then each one of those would have its own page. So for example, we click on box wraps and it disappeared.
It's a work in progress.
Don't know.
So you would see an array of photos
Yes.
with different, yes.
So
Yeah.
each piece would have its own page. So then you would have multiple pictures. If we have information on the artist, there information on the artist, if there any history behind the piece, if that's important, would be there as well. So all that would be there. And then there would also be an art map. Let's see if that one will come up.
I love this idea.
Yeah, what we had on there for years was a scrolling carousel of a handful of photos that were all mismatched sizes, and it just drove me nuts. So he was able to get in there and actually make this look really nice and add this map. This is my favorite part.
So
This
then
is really
there'd be
cool.
that other page would be an art map. And with those categories, I kind of just threw together, each one would have its own symbol. So you could scroll in. So for example, you go to Pavilion Park, and then you'd click on the mural. There's pictures of the mural there.
Oh, that's
the
cool.
coordinates for it, the box wrap that's there. If there's multiple pictures I took, those would all be on there.
Yeah, so he actually went out in the field and took fresh photos.
That's
of these
awesome.
instead of using the
Yeah.
odds and ends photos that we have had over the years.
Right.
So yeah, anything that I knew of that was on Jen's list and anything else that I found, we talked about some kind of putting like the story walk in there under functional art. So it's work in progress. It's actually pretty close. The main thing I'm needing at this point, there's a lot of art that we didn't have names for, like what the piece
I
is
think
called.
Laura is going to have those. We need those from Laura.
And
so.
then contact information from the artist to get maybe a headshot of them if we want to put their face on there.
Yeah, and some of them, especially the bigger projects. Yeah.
So
Isn't that cool? I'm so happy.
Very cool.
Thank you to Mikkel, because oh boy, that's been on my wish list for years and I've never had time to do it or the expertise. And he just gets in the website and just, I don't know, works his magic like it's nothing. So yeah, huge thanks for him to finally help with this.
Mikkel, it's interesting when we were at the workshop with city council and they were talking about it. I think it was Annie that mentioned it would be nice to have an art district. Well, we don't really have a core downtown for an art district, but it made me think if we could have a little published art map and maybe in the form of a brochure that someone could grab and, go around and we'd probably want something more whimsical than
Yes.
that, but that's something we could consider spending using an artist, like the person doing the whimsical map at Trailhead to take, your creation and morph it into something that we could have for a brochure.
Yeah, and there's a lot of chamber of commerces that do that. So there's a lot of people even regionally that make those types of maps.
But having the research that you've done would make that such an easy project. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah, the hard part was doing this initial inventory, but now that we have the bones of it, it's just a matter of continuing to add to it.
So I did get one of the pages up, so I'll just show you real quick and then get us out of here. So for example, this is the box wrap page. So then you would have each box wrap an initial image with the name of it. Like I said, some of them I don't have names for. And then each image you'll be able to click on eventually, and then it'll take you to their individual page. So like this is writing a rainbow. So more images, if there's history behind it. I just stole this from
look at that.
I just stole this from our website, so we can't technically use it. I just kind of want to show you guys what it would look like. Just some information from her website about her, and then different angles of the same art. So that's kind of roughly what I was doing, just so we have the bones down, and then we just plug in the information we don't have.
Winter projects for us. Things like
I absolutely love it. It's very nicely done.
Yeah.
We want to include any private art, like at public areas?
So we've talked about that. We're starting with city-owned art to start with, but yes, there are things like when the
But the Lofts has a lot of,
yeah, and the Frog Bench that the city actually does own, but it wasn't geared, it didn't have anything to do with the Parks and Arts Commission at the time. It was installed on what is that road?
I've-
Between the two golf courses
never
going up
seen
the
it.
hill.
Oh.
Anyway, Valleyway. It was on Valleyway. And that was part of that,
Oh, yes.
that road project where they put the sidewalk in. So that's a city-owned
going back a ways.
piece of art, but it wasn't. So we're starting with Parks and Arts Commission.
Because there's some
starting with that.
Greenstone owned art too
Yeah,
in the city.
And then eventually incorporating out into some of the, so we've discussed that. And I think it'd be great to do all city art that we can find, but we're to keeping it simple in the beginning, keeping it with Parks and Arts.
We were in Phoenix or Scottsdale in one of the hotels, and they had there was a Native American series of sculptures, and they had a whimsical map on a handout that you could walk from the hotel and cover about 8 pieces. It was really eye-catching. They actually had it mounted as well inside the elevator. So when you were in the elevator stand there for 20, 30 seconds, you could see it. So I think great idea. Good ideas.
I think I was in Castlegar and they had a sculpture art walk with a little map you got at their visitor center and you could walk it. Very nicely done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Is,
Miguel.
is Derek still on?
Yes.
Because I just, that, for some reason, when I saw the art and I thought the memorial fallen heroes thing, the Rose Garden deal at Orchard Park.
Oh, Never Forget Garden?
You never forget. Thank you. Never Forget Garden at Orchard Park. I wonder if we have beautification money. Can we do something with that horrible piece of plywood thing?
Oh, Derek?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that would be, I forgot about that.
I mean, would that be something that your team could make a suggestion on and complete this year? Because that's such a nice spot until you look at the plywood thing.
Yeah, let me talk more tomorrow with Jen, and we'll get something figured out and get it completed.
Because that would be a quick, easy project that would make an impact, I think.
Bob needs to go.
Okay.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you. I think we're just winding down anyway. We'll see you at the next meeting.
Yeah, the last thing I have is just looping you all in, as I promised last year, that with the CFP, we have our first draft and it's already outdated as of today. The pages are a little out of sort. So you'll see the 2025 to 2030 detailed descriptions for each project, and then skip a page and go to the big pullout. And that's our draft CFP that has been presented to council. And I do not have mine. I gave mine to. That's fine. So everything is on. This is just the park projects. This is not transportation projects. This is not our equipment list or anything. This is just facility and parks projects. So take a look through that. If you have questions, definitely bring them to the next meeting or email me and we can chat. But this is where you'll find the Public Art Fund PF-5. That's the amount, and we will be adding the 20,000 to that 157,000. So I've already asked Mikkel to run down and have Lisa update that for the budget for next year. So
Okay.
So the Pavilion Park playground equipment is 2026
Correct.
project.
yeah, the planning phase will begin next year is
Gotcha.
the idea. And citizen input.
And speaking of input, we did receive a couple of emails. Dan Dunn representing Kiwanis said that they were potentially interested in being involved in the Pavilion Park playground equipment upgrade with maybe some financial support depending on what comes out of that. And that's on our agenda for next year to start gathering input and seeing what potentially an all-inclusive playground equipment might look like. And then a representative from US Bank has just reached out via email. I thought they might be here, but they potentially might have bank volunteers if we had some kind of a project day, like clean up bike lanes or something. I don't know, I'm making that up. But if there was something that, or if we needed them maybe for barefoot in the park or something, we wanted to do more of like a bike clinic or a basketball clinic or something, they would provide volunteers. And then they also said they would potentially be sponsors of something. So we can look at them possibly for a financial sponsorship. I guess they have a new manager here at the US Bank branch in Liberty Lake. And they were actually, these two gentlemen were at the, they were at the crab.
I got a whole table.
They were at the last meeting that I attended at City Hall when when Laura gave the report the last time. They were there just listening to the meeting. So they want to be involved in the community and they like the connection with parks and arts. So that may be coming down the line. The final thing we need to discuss before we adjourn is our next meeting is Monday, November 4th. It's my understanding the city council, instead of meeting November 5th, because it's election night, is also meeting November 4th in this room. But we would need to vacate the room by 5:30, which, given how our agendas are now and not looking on the strategic plan, I think that works. Does anybody have any concern about that, or we'll just move ahead as we do?
Does that work for you, Mark?
Yeah.
We talked to Evan. It seems okay for him, but you don't foresee any reason why we can't be in here till 5:30.
No, not at all.
Okay, so I don't think there's any reason to change it. And if we run long, then we'll just have to move some of the agenda items to our next meeting or something. Okay.
Sounds good.
All right. Does anybody else have anything that we've forgotten or I've messed up? Okay. All right. Well, thanks everyone for coming. We'll need a motion to adjourn.
I so move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. We adjourn. I'm assuming there's no discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you. And Mark, thanks for coming. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.